On the news, Buhari chairs last Federal Executive Council meeting as president. Kwara State Governor Abdulrahman Abdulrazak emerges new chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum. And Central Bank of Nigeria raises interest rate to 18.5%. Glad to have you join us on News Now on TV 360 Nigeria. I am Simisola Adigun. President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in 7 federal commissioners of the Revenue, Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The ceremony took place before the valedictory service of the Federal Executive Council meeting at the State House, Abuja. The council meeting, which is the last for the Buhari administration, recorded a full house as all the ministers and other members of the cabinet are within the council chambers of the Senate House, the venue of the meeting. Vice President Yemi Osinbajo also presented the report on the Health Reform Committee to President Buhari. The committee, which is chaired by Osinbajo, was put in place to develop a roadmap to achieving universal health coverage in the country.
This report recommends that vaccine manufacturing in Nigeria should be seen from the perspective of a national health security imperative rather than purely as a commodity production. Mr. President, we do not have any illusions that these reforms are easy to implement. Beyond the financing requirements, there will be a need for global expertise and collaboration. In this regard, local and international development partners will be much needed. For this and other purposes, we have proposed the setting up of a program delivery unit in the Office of the President. This independent but empowered unit would monitor and drive the reforms. An important part of the report are the draft National Health Amendment Bill and the draft amendments of other relevant bills. Mr. President, while it is our duty to prepare this comprehensive roadmap towards universal health care in Nigeria, it has become the responsibility of the incoming administration to take this journey to its much desired destination, and we wish them well in that patriotic enterprise. Again, we thank you, sir, for this opportunity, and on behalf of the Presidential Health Reform Committee, it is my special pleasure and privilege to present to you, sir, the Health Reform Report and draft bills. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
President Muhammadu Buhari has said that the policies taken by his administration were deliberately made for the development of the country. He said this on Tuesday during the commissioning of the newly built 19.6 billion naira Nigeria Customs Service corporate headquarters in Abuja as part of activities lined up for his exit from office. President Buhari said that such policies became legacy programs because they later became the delight of the people and the country. There are more details in this report. This is the new corporate headquarters of the Nigeria Customs Service, located in Maitama, one of the highbrow areas of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. The building, referred to as Customs House, is a 12-floor tower with 5 floors on both wings of the tower and bridges linking the 2 wings. The project, which was conceived in 2002, is to provide a comfortable and conducive working environment for staff and authorized visitors to the building. Speaking after a tour of the building, President Muhammadu Buhari, while hailing the efforts of the Nigeria Customs Service, said that his move to deliberately close the borders stemmed from the desire to make the country attain the level of food sufficiency. He said the ban on importation of foreign rice, for instance, was one of such policies.
I deliberately closed the borders because knowing Nigerians, they order rice and give some Niger address, and then they bring the rice here. And with our land and our potentialities, we thank God, Nigeria is favored. We have people, we have land, we have weather. How many nations are so lucky as Nigeria in the world? Very few nations are as lucky as we are. We thank God for that.
In his response, the Comptroller of Customs, retired Colonel Hamid Ali, said the building will create a conducive environment for personnel to carry out their responsibilities effectively. He revealed that the building was technologically friendly with the necessary facilities to monitor activities across the country's different borders and commands.
We will remain resolute in our commitment to delivering our mandate with utmost professionalism, integrity, and efficiency. We pledge to leverage the newly commissioned headquarters, equipped with modern infrastructure and technology to drive our transformation and agenda forward.
On her part, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, said the new customs headquarters symbolized the present government's commitment to effective service delivery.
The board is proud to be involved in the formulation of broad policies to drive these reforms. Foremost among these have been the successful and regular conduct of promotions for deserving officers within the service. We have recognized the hard work, the dedication, and exceptional performance of our customs personnel, rewarding them through regular promotions to higher ranks and responsibility, and instilling a sense of pride, motivation, and career progression within the ranks.
While thanking the President for signing the Nigeria Customs Act of 2022, the Finance Minister added that under her leadership, the board prioritized customs staff welfare by ensuring regular promotion for customs personnel, training opportunities, amongst others. Simisola Adigun, TV 360 News. Well, joining me to speak on the effects of the nation's border closures in the past 8 years of the Buhari administration, entrepreneur Obinaya Orakwa, who's also a public affairs analyst, joins me. Thank you very much for your time. Now, I'll ask you, why did the policy of closing the nation's borders not yield the desired results, to ensure food sufficiency for the country in the last 8 years?
Thank you, Simisola. Thank you, Nigeria. Straight up, the policy was well intended, but you have to look at it holistically. Taking one policy from one perspective will not cut it, especially in the age of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And being the top leader in ECOWAS, the expectation of the ECOWAS region was that Nigeria, as their leader, will show direction. Closing the border is just a short-term measure to protect maybe a few big business corporates, and then the sentiment, and then just trying to pander to that sentiment that we should grow Nigeria and feed Nigeria. But again, what are the foundational structures, systems and structures put in place to appropriate the benefits of such a policy, if it's actually a good policy to adopt? First of all, the policy of closing the borders, just like Rwanda, where I am at the moment, closing the borders against DRC because of rebel incursions. Yet, I had a meeting yesterday and someone said they still with DRC Congo on food and so on. So for Nigeria, closing the border alienates other countries in West Africa, and it has implications diplomatically, not for this discussion. But for us, I do not think the closure of the border really worked, because foundationally, we need to look at land titling issues. The land use decree of 1978 needs to be looked upon. To what extent do people actually hold enough land to be able to farm in commercial quantity? Much of what you see in Nigeria is peasant agricultural practices. We do not particularly have commercial agriculture, mechanized agriculture, because of lack of proper investment, mechanization, and so on. From Akiwumi Additional, we saw some ramping up of that, the e-wallet system for farmers, fertilizer support, and all that. We do not think that has happened. Road infrastructure. Yes, effort has been made to build roads, but to what extent do the farmers go in to plant, move fertilizer into plant, and when it's time to harvest, do they also have enough road infrastructure and networks to bring things from rural areas into the cities? The next one is you need to look at customs reforms and even the capacity of the customs. I like the fact that we've built a 19.2 billion naira infrastructure for the customs headquarters. But it goes beyond that. Nigeria has over 1,500 porous borders, and we do not think we have enough customs officers to man those borders. The implication is that if you do not have enough customs officers, if you do not have enough capacity of the customs staff built, then you're going to have the available staff stretched, and then smuggling will continue. Yes, closure of border has led to 20% reduction in our fuel consumption, meaning that much of the fuel that used to cross the border, we have reduced that with bill. It still hasn't solved the problem. We still have oil subsidy in place. So let's call a spade a spade. It hasn't worked as expected. Rice was about 9,000 naira in 2015. Today, rice is selling at 42,000, 48,000, depending on where it's coming. Yes, Anchor Borrowers Program launched in November 2015, I guess it was, by Aldrobe and President Buhari in Kebbi State, and then with 9 states running that process. And yes, we had Lake rice, Lagos and KB come up. We have rice from different places, Umza rice and so on, rice and Kano, rice mills springing all over the place. But we need to also consider that we have not made enough investments as a nation in agriculture, which should have prepared us for the benefits of closing the border. I believe we should have put a few structures in place before closing the border, if closing the border was actually a good policy in the first place.
All right, entrepreneur and public affairs analyst Obinaya Uruapa, thank you very much for speaking to us. Moving on, Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak of Kwara State has emerged as the new chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum, NGF. This was contained in a communique signed by Tambawal at the end of the 7th emergency meeting of the state governors held on Tuesday in Abuja. Governor Abdulrazak replaces Governor Aminu Tambawal of Sokoto State, whose tenure of office would elapse on May the 29th. Abdulrazak emerged through the consensus, while Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde was chosen as vice chairman of the forum. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve the payment of judgment debts awarded by different courts against the federal government. President Buhari said the judgment debts were awarded in different currencies. The request, which was contained in a letter read by a President of the Senate, Ahmad Lawan, at Wednesday's plenary. The judgment debts are to be settled through the issuance of promissory notes, which will then be redeemed over time through provisions in the budgets of the federal government of Nigeria.
I wish to request the Senate to kindly consider and approve through its resolution the settlement of the top priority judgment debts and general judgment debts incurred by federal MDS in the sum of USD 566,754,584 $31, 281,801,881 naira 64 kobo through the issuance of promissory notes. The Honorable Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice and the Honorable Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning shall provide any information that may be required by the Senate for the consideration of this request. While looking forward to the expeditious consideration and approval of the Senate, please accept the single Senate President the assurances of my highest regards. Yours sincerely, Muhammadu Buhari.
2 years after the #EndSARS protest, which swept through major parts of the country in 2020, the Nigerian Senate is seeking compensation for victims. The bill, titled A Bill for an Act to Amend the National Emergency Management Agency (NEMA) Act, was sponsored by Senator Bassi Gershom of the PDP representing Cross River South Senatorial District. Bassi, in his lead debate, said the bill sought to provide for the establishment of the EndSARS Victims Compensation Fund. The bill was then referred to the Committee on Special Duties for further legislative actions to report back in 1 week.
The findings of such judicial panels of inquiry and the committees set up by the Senate on EndSARS reveal that the killings of protesters, destruction of private and public property by rampaging hoodlums who seized and took over the protest, vandalizing and looting valuable assets. The implementation of the recommendations of all the panels and committees regarding compensation has been very discouraging. The victims have been left to continually groan under the pain of injury inflicted by hoodlums during the EndSARS protests. Distinguished colleagues, this amendment, therefore, is to make provision for the establishment of the EndSARS Victims Compensation Fund.
This is what happened in all the states, and the different states are treating it in different ways. But he is actually seeking for holistic and national way of ensuring that the victims get justice. So I don't see why we should waste time in ensuring that we pass this to ensure that the victims of NSAS get justice.
Those in favor that this bill be now read the second time, say aye. Those against, say nay.
A Chief Magistrate's Court sitting in Yaba, Lagos has dismissed an application by the Nigeria Police Force seeking to arraign Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti over alleged assault on a police officer. At the resumed hearing of the case, Police Counsel Cyril Ejiofor sought the leave of court to arraign the singer, having preferred a charge against him. The musician was in court on Wednesday for the hearing of his case and was released on bail on Tuesday evening following the detention at the State Criminal Investigative Department, Banti, since May the 15th. Justice Adiola Olatubosun, however, adjourned till July the 3rd to await legal advice from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions on the matter. We'll go on a break here, but still to come, Nigeria's GDP growth falls to 2.31% in first quarter of 2023. Stay with us for more details of the story and more when we return. Welcome back. Quickly, let's give you a recap of our top stories. President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in 7 federal commissioners of the Revenue, Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The ceremony took place before the valedictory session of the Federal Executive Council meeting at the State House, Abuja. The council meeting, which is the last for the Buhari administration, recorded a full house as all the ministers and other members of the cabinet are within the council chambers of the State House, the venue of the meeting. We also told you that Governor Abdurrahman Abdulrazak of Kwara State has emerged as the new chairman, while Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde was chosen as vice chairman of the Forum of the Nigeria Governors Forum. This was contained in a communique signed by Governor Tambawal at the end of the 7th emergency meeting of the state governors held on Tuesday in Abuja. Abdulrazak, who emerged through consensus, will replace Governor Aminu Tambawal of Sokoto State, whose tenure of office would elapse on May the 29th. Now, in case you missed any of our news bulletins or for more updates, you can catch us on Limex World TV or log onto our website on www.tv360nigeria.com. You can also follow us on our social media platforms on Twitter, Instagram and YouTube at TV360 Nigeria. On Facebook, we're at TV360 Online. After more than 3 years, the global COVID emergency is officially over, yet it's still killing at least 1 person every 4 minutes in the United States, and questions on how to deal with the virus remain unanswered, putting vulnerable people and under-vaccinated countries at risk. According to the director of the Clinical Epidemiology Center at the Veterans Affairs St. Louis Healthcare System in Missouri, Ziad Al-Ali, COVID is still a leading killer, the 3rd biggest in the U.S. last year, behind heart disease and cancer. Al-Ali said unlike other common causes of death, such as smoking and traffic accidents that led to safety laws, though politicians aren't pushing for ways to reduce the harm, such as mandated vaccinations or masking in closed spaces. By leveraging international experience and collaborating with relevant parties, Vietnam has the potential to become a leading country in the region regarding vaccine production, enhancing its capacity to access and produce vaccines to address future diseases. This contribution to global efforts in responding to health crisis was highlighted at a workshop held on Monday as part of the project on enhancing vaccine access and health system capacity for Vietnam's response to COVID-19, funded by the government of Japan through the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP. Vietnam is one of the 11 countries receiving technology transfer for mRNA vaccine production. We'll take another break here and be right back. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Let's now join Mary Kanu for business news. Over to you, Mary.
Thank you, Simsala. Welcome to Business News. For the third consecutive time, the Central Bank of Nigeria has raised its benchmark lending rate to 18.5% from 18% in an aggressive push to contain the nation's inflationary pressure. CBN Governor Godwin Emefiele announced this on Wednesday after the bank's Monetary Policy Committee meeting. While addressing journalists at the end of a two-day meeting in Abuja, Emefiele disclosed that the MPC also voted to keep the cash reserve ratio at 32.5%, while the liquidity ratio was retained at 30%.
The MPC therefore opted to tighten, though moderately, to 1. Indicate the MPC's conviction that the current policy stance is moderating the rising inflation, albeit month by month, and sustaining the stance would consolidate the gains made so far. 2. Support the efforts towards moderating the demand pool inflation as cost of funds increases and discourages further build-up in aggressive demand in the face of declining output growth. 3. Narrow the negative real effective interest rate gap and moderate the associated consequences, including discouraging domestic savings mobilization and winning investor confidence. Members thus resolved by unanimous vote to raise the MPR, but moderately. 10 members voted to raise the MPR by 50 basis points and 1 member by 25 basis points. All members voted to keep all parameters constant. In summary, the MPC voted 1. Raise the MPR to 18.5%, 2. Retain the asymmetric corridor of plus 100 and minus 700 basis points around the MPR, and 3. Retain the CRR at 32.5%, and 4. Retain the liquidity ratio at 30%.
Still in business, Nigeria's gross domestic product growth fell to 2.31% in the first quarter of 2023 from 3.52% in the fourth quarter of 2022. According to new GDP results from the National Bureau of Statistics, the decline can be attributed to the adverse effects of the cash crunch experienced during the quarter. The NBS added that performance of the GDP in the first quarter of 2023 was driven mainly by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 4.35% and contributed 57.29% to the aggregate GDP. We'll take a break here and return with stock market report. Nigeria's equities market furthered its northward trend, rising by 0.58% to defy rate hike by the Monetary Policy Committee. Now, just after the MPC raised its benchmark interest rate to 18.5%, the NGX All-Share Index and market capitalization also increased further to 52,927 basis points and 28.83 trillion naira. Now, it's a bullish day for the NGX thanks to stocks like Nestle Nigeria, which rose most to 1,148 naira, and Triple G and Company, as well as 34 other equities. Similarly, a summary of trading shows improvement in volume, values, and deals. Now, just as analysts had earlier predicted, it's midweek, and we've seen bullish sentiments overtake the NGX and only hope it can be sustained. A switch now to some select global stocks. The bear is in control in the US, UK, and Asia as global markets are struggling to reach a deal on the US debt ceiling, raising concerns of potential default, leading to some of the biggest sell-offs witnessed in months. Now, that's the stock market report. Back to you, Simisola, for the rest of the news.
Thank you very much, Mary, for the update. On the global scene, Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, has decried the situation that the world is failing to live up to its commitments to protect a growing number of civilians caught in conflict as enshrined in international humanitarian law. Speaking at a meeting with the Security Council, the UN chief said the death toll of people caught up in conflicts has surged more than 50% from the previous year, citing examples of civilian deaths in Ukraine and Sudan, schools destroyed in Ethiopia, and damage to water infrastructure in Syria.
Last November, states adopted a political declaration to protect civilians by restricting or refraining from the use of explosive weapons in populated areas. I urge all states to join and turn the declaration into meaningful action. And in December, the Security Council adopted Resolution 2664, which aims to prevent United Nations sanctions from arming civilians and obstructing humanitarian action. I urge all states to implement it and to exclude humanitarian and medical activities from their own counterterrorism and sanctions measures.
Finally, in sports, former Wolfsburg sporting director George Schmatke has admitted that he regrets cashing in on Victor Osimhen too soon during his time at the club. Schmatke, who is set to take over at Liverpool as their new sporting director, took the decision to sell the Nigeria international to Belgian club Sporting Charleroi in 2018. Osimhen failed to score a single goal in 16 outings for Wolfsburg before he was shipped out on a loan to Belgium. Reflecting on the decision, Schmatke said the most important lesson learned is to be patient with some transfers. Well, that's our bulletin this evening. Many thanks for watching. I am Simisola Ajiku. Bye for now.